All right, let's dive into a truly wild period in American history. We're talking about the time between 1870 and 1933. In just over 60 years, 7 amendments were added to the Constitution. And these weren't just small tweaks, they totally remade the country's rules on voting, government power, and even what you could drink.
So let's start with this question, because it really gets to the heart of our story. How does that happen? This whole episode shows that the Constitution isn't some dusty old document set in stone. No, it's a living, breathing thing capable of some really dramatic and sometimes, totally contradictory changes.
Okay, Act 1. First up, we're going to look at 2 huge amendments that tackled the most fundamental right you can have in a democracy, the right to vote. This was all about figuring out who really gets to be included in that phrase, "we the people."
So picture this. It's 1870, right after the Civil War. The 15th Amendment gets ratified, and it is a massive deal. For the very first time, the Constitution says point blank, you cannot deny someone the right to vote because of their race. This was a huge, direct effort to give the vote to formerly enslaved African-American men.
Now, check this out, because this is what's so fascinating. Flash forward 50 years to 1920. The women's suffrage movement finally wins its long fight with the 19th Amendment. And what legal language do they use? They use the exact same structure as the 15th. They just swapped out the reason for discrimination to on account of sex. It's an incredible piece of legal history right there.
All right, so once the nation started expanding who could vote, the next big project was, retooling the government itself. This next part is less about individual rights and more about updating the nuts and bolts of how the federal government actually works for a brand new century.
Before 1913, a federal income tax like we have today just wasn't a thing. The 16th Amendment completely changed the game. It gave Congress a power to tax people's incomes directly, without apportionment, which basically means without having to divvy it up based on state populations. This one change created a gigantic new source of money that would power the federal government's growth for the next century and beyond.
And right around the same time, another huge democratic change was going down. Originally, you didn't vote for your U.S. senators. Nope, they were picked by politicians back in your state capital. The 17th Amendment, also from 1913, said no more of that. It yanked that power away from the politicians and gave it directly to the voters, a total game changer for how we relate to our government.
So for more than 100 years, you had this really long, kind of awkward delay. An election would happen in November, but the winners wouldn't actually take office until March. This created what's called a lame duck period, where the folks who just lost the election were still in charge for months. The 20th Amendment in 1933 basically said, let's fix this. It moved the start dates up to January, making government way more responsive to what the voters actually just decided.
And that brings us to our final act. And honestly, it's the most unbelievable story of them all. It's about a massive, nationwide social experiment that was written into the Constitution and then, amazingly, written right back out.
With those words, right there. From 1919, the 18th Amendment kicked off the era of Prohibition. And you got to understand, this wasn't just another law. This was a constitutional command making it illegal to make or sell alcohol anywhere in the country. Talk about using the Constitution in a whole new way to regulate what people do in their everyday lives.
Okay, so let this sink in. Think of every single change, every amendment made to the Constitution since it was first written. In all of American history, only one, just one, has ever been totally repealed.
And there it is. In 1933, only 13 years after Prohibition started, the country slammed the brakes and did a complete 180. The 21st Amendment didn't just tweak the 18th, it completely erased it from the Constitution with one clean, powerful sentence. The great national experiment was officially over. So, when you step back and look at this whole journey, what's the big takeaway? Well, it's that the Constitution is not some fixed relic. In this one short span of time, we saw it used to expand voting rights, to modernize the government, and to launch and then end a massive social experiment. It proves that the power to amend isn't just about small fixes, it's the power to literally remake the rules of the nation.
This whole history of change, of expansion, and even of reversal leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. We've seen how the Constitution has evolved to meet the challenges of the past. So when you look at the world today, what do you think is the next great change that will be written into America's fundamental rules?